Good morning and welcome to the Ridiculously Early J Morning Show. My name is Michael. I'm your host, and today we're talking about metaprogramming. Metaprogramming is simply the act of writing programs that write programs for you. So as usual, I'm working on JPrez, my presentation tool written in J. And in the last episode, we talked about taking the keyboard mapping and turning it into a set of tables. We use those tables to generate the key bindings for the editor widget, but there's a couple places inside of JPrez where there's still some redundant code. We're going to show two different approaches to metaprogramming here. For the macro player, we're just going to replace this case statement with what amounts to a dictionary lookup. That's setting up sort of a dynamic dispatch system. And then on the other hand, we're going to do what I think of as more the classic metaprogramming, extending what we did yesterday, looking at those tables and generating some actual J code that we then execute. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, stick around. We left off yesterday talking about creating and joining tables using relational algebra. So we've got the keys mapping to the macros, and then we've got the macros mapping to the actual handlers. So that creates this namespace that has all of these key binding events for this outline editor, and the same thing for the REPL editor. And this is duplicate code. Every time I add a key binding, I have to update both of these tables or it doesn't work. And it's just the wrong way to do it. I don't know what the right way is yet, but I can get rid of this code and make it table driven. So as it says, we will generate this. So we generated a table slightly like this from these two column tables, and we're using them to generate a 3-column table by joining on this middle column. And that's what we did yesterday. So we get what's in this picture. The way that works is you take this column as our reference, right? These last 2 columns are in the same order. And so you can use this as an index into this column. So for each key over here, you find the index of that character in command character. And that gives you a list of numbers, indices, and you use those indices to extract the verbs. And then we just go ahead and include the actual command character. Then we loop through that table and just insert those characters according to this template. So this replaced a bunch of lines that look like this line right here. So let's explain this line. Just stick an LED on the end here. Whoops, it's key map. Then you can see it generates that template. If you just look at this side now, that's all this does. Generates these 3 strings. And then this box, this vertical line, and over here are the places where we would insert something. So we're taking these 2 items and we're going to put them, there's 3 here, there's 3 here, they're different lengths, but we're going to put them side by side. And so if we use this operation, that puts 2 things side by side. Sorry, we needed the first one. There you go. And then if you do that at rank 1 with the full list, you get this kind of 3-dimensional array of boxes, each of which contains a strings. So then we're going to use, what is this verb called? If you take your box thing like that and you put the semicolon in front of it, it converts it into a single string. So it unboxes and joins. And if we do that with the first item of key map, you want the dot there, Stitch takes those 2 parallel arrays and element wise puts them side by side. So that's what Stitch does, the comma dot. Then for each one of those lines, first we're going to convert it into a flat list like that. And then we're going to unbox it, except they're going to be flattened out altogether. That's certainly not right. Anyway, I was trying to show it step by step, but basically the semicolon does that, puts it in the right order for you. It isn't in the right order, is it? No, it's not. And that's because I didn't have this line here. I didn't have this character. So what I was doing is correct. Hang on, sorry. There we go. Yeah, same thing. Except when I did it this way, you notice there's all these spaces in here because in the process of unboxing, it becomes a rectangular array, and using the semicolon avoids that problem. Anyway, long story short, that is what's happening for one line. And then when we do it for all of them at rank 1, so that does nothing over here because this is a rank 1 array or list. This is a table. And so the rank 1 says, do this for every line of the table. So then we've converted our table into a bunch of code. All we have to do is give it a new template. I'm tempted to make this a little function. Maybe before I start generalizing this, let's just see what we have to actually generate. So the first step is here, which is in the update function. So this line is a macro. And when I press Shift N, it plays that macro. And this code is doing that. And so let's see if there's a better way to do that. So co-current, go into one of the editors. Sorry, we want to go into its class, UI edit widget. I say names here, and then we should see key commands. Keys, right? All right. We're not using keys here. So we're only dealing with the command. So command chars and command verbs. All right. So we want to map, and these are parallel and they are in the same order. So it is a mapping right there. So we find the index of the letter H, right? That's 6. And then we use that to extract the thing to run. So now what happens if you do something that does not have a special key binding? Like I think tilde does not have a key binding. That should give you an index error. So we need to add a default verb at the end, which would be like just nothing. So this is a list of strings. This is a verb. And to put them together, we can use tie. Tie takes this verb and turns it into a noun by wrapping it in a string, just like all the other ones. So when we do that, we get that verb in a box. And this is a conjunction. The parentheses are not necessary. Okay. So now this is the mapping of the character. We should get the same thing. Nope. Command chars and I. There we go. What I want is to make this the left argument to this verb. So you can either do it like that, which creates a fork. So this is the right identity function. So goodbye, hello. And then if you put this here, you get goodbye. So you have left and right identities. And that lets you say which one you want. I want this coming in on the right, but since we don't have an argument on the left over here anyway, either one would do the same things, but it seems to be a little faster to bind the left argument, which also produces a monad. This way you have verb, verb, noun, which is a fork and creates a verb, or you have the verb bound to a noun, which creates a single verb. And this seems to be a little bit more efficient. I could be wrong about that, but that's my observation in the past. So anyway, now we have a way to look up any character and see, is it a command? Well, that does nothing, but like X is the backspace and so on. And this is going to give us a boxed string. And whenever you have a boxed string that contains the name of a verb, that produces what's called a gerund. Yeah. So once you have this, so we'll say Y equals A because A doesn't do anything. All right. So then when we run this command with Y now defined, we get nothing. And then when we run that, this takes that box string and lets you execute it. It's called evoke gerund, and that gives us this. All right, but now we want to make this a verb that takes a Y argument. So now it's not doing anything; it's just defining a verb. We give it an argument, and now we have to actually execute that verb. So that should do nothing. Okay, co-current base, and then now go back into one of the editors. And if we ask for B, that's the buffer we were editing after I ran that macro. And if I say C, that tells me where the cursor is. And I'm guessing that's the end of the string right there. So the uppercase X is backspace. If I run this, I would expect the S to disappear next time I ask for B. So now I say B, and there we go. So this is now looking up the key in the table and using it to execute the mapped command. So this line right here, without the X, can now be used inside of our macro player to execute all of this stuff. I don't need to make it a function. I can just call this C. And this is covered. I just wanted to take these notes and stick them in my inbox for triage. My expectation is that this line will have completely replaced the set of case statements that was previously here. So GD, that's my change. So let's see if that works. JPres. And the test is whether this macro runs. If I press Shift N, it does. So that worked. I'm happy with that. And so now this character is actually in the macro language. It sets up like an escape code so that you can actually insert. So since I only have two cases, I think that the answer here now is to say if C is equal to the question mark, then set the mode to I, else do this. And then that's it. And so that should still work. Let's try it again and Shift N to run. And it does. So I'm going to check that in. UI edit, make macro player table driven. And now I've got a similar problem where I have a bunch of redundant code in JPres itself. I don't really have a good plan for how to handle changing the focus between different things. Right now, this is called a list widget, and I've got the keys 0 and 9 bound to navigating through this thing. And then like N and P handle this widget. Then this is a widget, and then this is a widget. And then inside of this widget, you have the actual REPL editor. And then inside of this widget, if you have a line that does not start with a colon, then when you press E, it lets you edit there. So I've got all these different widgets here. And of course, now when you press E, you're inserting it into your text. So there's this situation where you're changing all the key bindings as you go around. I don't really have a good design for that yet. It's like the big design problem that I'm facing. So now when I'm in one of those editors, I have this whole chunk of code that says just copy all the key bindings from the outline editor. And this says copy all the key bindings from the REPL editor. And basically A, they're redundant, and B, I think possibly I'm like missing some. You have to keep these in check. And so I wanted to make all this table driven. I usually have this like one line up. So we want to generate this code. Anything that is not the default binding, we can specify manually. This is the default binding. This is the catch-all handler for any like printable ASCII character. This is Control-I, so the tab. And so that's going to be overridden, but the rest of it will be exactly taken from that configuration table. And then eventually it'll be taken from your own user specified key bindings. All right, so I want to generate these lines of code and these lines of code. I use pages. So I use this Control-L character that I'm paging back and forth between two chunks of code in the same file. Anyway, I really only need the column of the commands, right? So for here, go into one of the editors. This is like moving the JConsole's namespace into one of my objects so I can just deal with the values locally. I don't have to specify where they are or what object they belong to. So that was co-current. And in fact, if I go into the actual class name, UI edit widget, and I just say names, that will tell me all the things that are in this namespace. And key press is the list of names. All right, so if I go all the way back where you start, a co-current base, I always get these mixed up, co-current base. So I can say key press of _red. That's like red dot key press in most other languages. It's like a subscript. So we get that. And from that, I need to generate each one of these lines of code. All right, so for each item of this table, or this is a one-dimensional list of boxes, each containing a string. And so for each box, I want to do something. So the curly braces make a new function. Its argument is called Y. And then I'm going to unbox the thing and echo it. And for some reason, when you have the debugger on, it does not let you make a function like this. This is a relatively new syntax, and it does not work well with the debugger here. So that worked. If I didn't have that, you would see them in boxes. So the unbox character is causing it to unbox the input. And so what I want to do is y, comma y. So that should give me two of these boxes next to each other. Yes. And then the second one so this will give me an error because now I have a box and a string, but I can put this to join them by first boxing them again. So then this will repair that. Although really what I want is this. So unbox it, rebox it, and then put a comma next to it, and then put the two boxes together. The reason for that is that now I can say underscore red or whatever. And then I can even say, so once I have that, then I can put, I think once it's boxed, then you can put this together and it won't affect anything. Nope. Comma. Wait, why is that happening? All right, so instead of this, I'm just going to say, instead of at rank 0, I'm going to say spread 0, and then the boxes go away. And we'll just get the strings. Yeah, because that was annoying. So the S is for spread. So spread this command out over the boxes at level 0. And you could do nested boxes. So you can say spread at level 5 or something like that if you want. But level 0 is each individual box. And then we can just put the code we want, which I think is this, right? That's not valid J. That's valid J. It's always a symbol followed by some number of dots and colons. So this is the global assignment. And I'm just going to put some spaces in there. So I think that is exactly what I wanted to say. It's in a different order, but that is exactly right. Then instead of echo, I'm going to execute that. So KCT is now, so I'm just going to some new namespace, and then we'll say red is equal to red of base, red in the base namespace. So now we have red, and then this is a reference to an object, right? But that should give me the text, and then I can just execute that entire block of text at once. So right now in this namespace, KCT does nothing, a value error. And as soon as I execute it with this do command, then KCT is going to give me that. And then, so buffer of red is empty. So we can say set val of red to hello. And now the buffer is hello. And then if I call that function again, which is swap, control T, the swap in Emacs, it does like that. And so I'm used to Emacs, not expecting that result. That's what I'm expecting. But why does it, I'm just curious now. It doesn't do anything that is not a problem that it has a result, but why does it have a result? So we can flatten this and see the actual definition of that. Oh, okay. I guess we can't. KCT and for red. Log, oh, yeah, right, that's right. Okay. So that's the timestamp. Log is recording the macro. So of course, because we wanted to record the macro with timing, that's what's being returned from the timing system. Normally you would, if you don't use the side effect, you would do something like 0, reshape of it to turn it into an empty array or something. And then it's like returning it a null value or something. But yeah, but that was a timestamp. So if I do that KCT again, I'll get a higher timestamp. Oh, it's the entire log. Yeah. And so then when we call get log of red, then it takes these numbers and it uses them to decide the timing between the different keystrokes. And if since it took me so long to do that, it's like there's a 2-beat pause in between each keystroke, whereas where the first time it was longer and then shorter and so on. Eventually, I'm going to have something a little bit more like musical notation where you could say, what is the tempo for this line? And then it won't have to be filled with so many underscores. But in any case, that's what's happening here. That's why that was returning a weird number. And now I'm going back to the idea that this line somewhere in my history is generating all this code, which I then want to execute. So that should have no problem. So now I should be able to replace all these lines with that line and just make it table driven. And I'm going to put this as an example. Copy key map from red. Yep, I like that example. And since we have some duplicate code, we could do the same thing on the outlines version of the editor. Okay, so all this goes away. Still 2 lines of duplicate code, but much nicer than many lines of duplicate code. All right, so let's test to make sure this worked. JPrez. What is the test? The test is, can I type? I can type. I can do all this stuff. Hello. Hello. The enter key does not seem to be working. This is not ed keys, but REPL keys. I think I deleted one too many lines. So GSGD of JPrez. So for the first, it's the red that is failing, and it was map. That's control M is the enter key handler. All right. So why isn't that working? Tab is working. I'm just going to explicitly set that line for a second and then see. Hang on. Cocurrent REPL keys names KC_M. Is it possible that control M is not in my table? That would explain it, right? That is exactly what happened. But why? Hang on. Hit keys. So for the line editor, it's set to stop, but it's supposed to be calling a function called accept. I think what happened is that is actually defined here in the REPL widget, which is the container widget for this thing. Somewhere in here, I said KC of M of ed is accept. Yes. But I would still, oh, okay. Yeah, I get it. That is defined in the namespace for, so if I say names of red, red, then KCM is there. It is defined in that namespace. But so what I really want is, I think that's fine. I don't need to change any of this code. I'm just overriding the default. But by default, but basically this needs to be in that table, KC of M, if I want it to work. So sorry, in edit.ijs. I need KC of M to be added to my table. So Control M, E of G, H, I, J, K, L, M, KC of M. I need to bind that to a macro. And I think that I'm going to call that exclamation point because that's what was my to-do item here. So macro, this isn't related to that, but this really should have been a separate to-do item. So that's macro should be eval. And yeah, so that exclamation point is going to be the except. And I'm just going to have except not do anything. So we'll sort these lines again, sort lines, except, and then I'll make a default for up, down, arrow keys, and then except is just do nothing. Maybe on except or something, but it's called except elsewhere. I guess it doesn't matter because this is not actually called. Yeah. And so then this would be on except, meaning that it's meant to be overridden. And so then like, just clean up this. So this is now going to generate the binding that says on exclamation point, call on except, which is, and then that macro character is bound to Control M for enter. And so it's going to make this key binding. It's going to generate this key binding for me. But then JPrez just completely overrides it. Probably I just need to say to do clean up case except versus on except in JPrez. In REPL.ijs. Okay, come on. There we go. Org mode doesn't like underscores very much. So you have to escape them. And it didn't like the way I was escaping that character. Okay, so that should work now. Basically, I just needed to add this to the table. Then it recognizes that is a key that this thing is supposed to handle. And it's going to copy the key binding. And because REPL assigns it to the editor, assigns this in the editor's namespace, it's going to copy this, which is saying call the accept function inside of the REPL widget. Fix this ugly mess. Yeah, so I've just fixed this ugly mess. How did I fix this ugly mess? Well, I can say on except here. It's still an ugly mess, but I think the ugly way to create a reference to a method on this object. So at least here, I'm not directly overriding the key binding. I'm just calling the event handler. So basically this mess right here is constructing the name. This is going to be like accept underscore like 7 or something like that, where 7 is the number of the namespace of this particular instance of the UI REPL. It's something like a bound method, whatever. Let's try this and see if it works. So that seems to be working. And then the question was, did my enter key work? Next slide. So I have some room. Enter key not working. Okay. It is there. Did I reload it? Just to be sure. Not working. Okay. Oh, I didn't set the handler in the right namespace. Hello. Enter. There we go. Okay. So I10. There we go. Sum of I10. Perfect. Okay. All that's working. And I think that concludes the make key bindings table driven. All right. That's it. If you like this, please hit the like button, let YouTube know, and maybe check out one of these other videos. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.